They told you World War I began with two bullets in Sarajevo. They told you it was a tragic accident of alliances, a messy family feud between European monarchs. They lied. That is the fairy tale version. The version designed to keep you from looking at the map. Because if you actually look at the map of the world in 1900, you won't see a war over an archduke. You will see a war over a business deal. You will see the one thing that terrified the British Empire more than any army, any navy, or any weapon on earth. It was a train. This is the story of the Berlin-Baghdad Railway, an iron road designed to break the British chokehold on the world. It is the story of how a single construction project turned the Middle East into a graveyard, reshaped the borders of the modern world, and set a trap that we are still walking into today. This is the story of the Berlin-Baghdad Railway, an iron road designed to break the British chokehold on the world. It is the story of how a single construction project turned the Middle East into a graveyard, reshaped the borders of the modern world, and set a trap that we are still walking into today. To understand why the world is burning right now, you have to understand the train that never arrived. Turn back the clock to the turn of the 20th century. The British Empire isn't just a country, it's a global monopoly. They act less like a government and more like a mafia. They own the oceans. Specifically, they own the Suez Canal. The Suez Canal was the jugular vein of the global economy. It was the only way to quickly reach India, the crown jewel of the British system. As long as Britain held Suez, they decided who got rich and who stayed poor. If you were a German merchant or a Russian trader wanting to send goods to the East, you had to pass through British checkpoints. You had to play by British rules. But in the heart of Europe, a new power was rising: Germany. Germany had unified in 1871 and was becoming an industrial titan. German factories were outproducing British factories. German science was the envy of the world, but Germany had a fatal problem. They had no empire. They had no massive colonies to provide cheap raw materials. And worst of all, they had no navy that could challenge the British. Germany was a giant trapped in the center of Europe, surrounded by enemies and cut off from the global markets. By the British fleet, they were suffocating. At the same time, to the southeast, lay the Ottoman Empire. For centuries, the Ottomans had been a superpower, but by the late 19th century, they were known as the sick man of Europe. The empire was rotting from the inside. They had lost territory in the Balkans. Their army was outdated, but their biggest problem was debt. The Ottoman government was drowning in loans owed to British and French banks. In 1881, the empire had effectively gone bankrupt to pay back their creditors. They were forced to surrender control of their own economy to an organization called the Ottoman Public Debt Administration. This wasn't just a bank, it was a foreign government within a government. It was a board of European bankers who literally collected the taxes from Ottoman citizens. If a Turkish farmer sold salt, silk, or tobacco, the money did not go to the Sultan, it went straight into a bank vault in London or Paris. The Sultan at the time, Abdul Hamid II, was desperate. He knew his empire was being eaten alive by foreign capital. He needed a way to modernize his country and defend his borders without relying on the very people who were robbing him. He needed infrastructure. He needed a railway that could move troops from Constantinople to the desert frontiers in days rather than months. But he knew that if he asked the British or French to build it, they would just use it to tighten their grip. This is where the interests of Germany and the Ottoman Empire collided in a perfect storm. The German Kaiser, Wilhelm II, saw an opportunity that would change the balance of power forever. If Germany could build a railway connecting Berlin to Constantinople, and then extend that railway all the way to Baghdad in the Persian Gulf, they could bypass the British Empire entirely. Think about the geometry of this. A train loaded with German steel or chemicals could leave Berlin, travel through Vienna, across the Balkans, enter Turkey, and travel all the way to the Indian Ocean without ever seeing a British ship. It was a massive overland route the Royal Navy couldn't touch, uniting German industry with Middle Eastern resources. For Germany, it was world power. For Britain, it was a nightmare. German engineers began blasting tunnels through the Taurus Mountains and laying tracks across scorching deserts. As the rails moved east, London panicked. They saw a dagger pointed at the heart of their empire, threatening the Suez Canal and their hold on India. But there was something even more dangerous than trade: oil. The British Navy needed oil to survive, but they had none. The Germans, however, had secured drilling rights all along the railway in what is now Iraq. If that train reached Baghdad, Germany wouldn't just dominate the economy, they would control the fuel of future wars. London decided the line had to die. They blocked the railway's exit to the sea in Kuwait. They weaponized banks to starve the project of cash. They launched a propaganda war calling it a tool of tyranny, but the rails kept moving east. By 1914, the panic in London was absolute. So when the war started, British troops didn't just march on Germany, they invaded Iraq. They moved to seize the oil fields before the Kaiser could. The Ottomans fought back, praying for German supplies. But the tragedy was simple: the railway wasn't finished. A gap in the mountains created a bottleneck that strangled their war effort. If those tracks had been completed 5 years earlier, history would look very different. Instead, the British conquered the Middle East, and then they took out a pencil. Mark Sykes and Francois Georges Picot drew arbitrary lines across the map. They didn't care about the people living there. They cared about securing the oil and ensuring no single power could ever unite the region again. The railway was cut into pieces. The Arabs, who fought for freedom, were betrayed and handed over to colonial rule. The British built pipelines instead of trains because pipelines carry wealth out, not people together. The dream of a Silk Road was dead, but the ghost of the railway didn't disappear. In World War II, Hitler tried to seize the same corridor. In the Cold War, the US fortified Turkey to block the Soviets from the same path. The location never changes. Control the corridor, control the world. And today, the script is playing out again. China is the new Germany, the United States is the new British Empire, and the Belt and Road Initiative is the new Baghdad Railway. China is building overland routes to bypass the American Navy, just like the Kaiser tried to bypass the British fleet, and just like 1900, the dominant empire is panicking. We hear about debt traps and security threats. It is the same anxiety, just 100 years later. The lesson is brutal. A road is never just a road, it is a weapon. And empires will burn the world down before they let a rival control the flow of trade. The borders of the Middle East were not drawn to create nations, they were drawn to stop a train. And until we understand that, we are doomed to repeat the crash. If this video opened your eyes, hit the like button so this truth reaches more people. And if you know someone who still believes the schoolbook version of history, share this with them. This is Empire Archives. If you want to see the patterns everyone else misses, hit subscribe. The next train is leaving the station, and you don't want to be standing on the tracks.